I have one of those generic Chinese airbrush compressors like everybody else, and sometimes they break because they're not super high quality. So today I'm going to pull apart my compressor, show you how it's done, and then I'm going to put it back together and show you how that's done. And I'm going to have some comments in the description below where I'll show you links to where you can get replacement parts for your compressor. So if you have any problems with yours, you can follow along and fix any parts of your compressor that are not working. Anyway, if you enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up. I'm Dave. This is Hughie.
Future Dave here. I had a bit of an issue when I put my compressor back together. I thought I'd broken it. I did figure out the problem and sort it all out, but the easiest way to do this is to check a couple things before you pull your compressor apart. So I'm going to show you that first before we pull the compressor apart. So when I put my compressor back together, I had an issue where the overpressure valve, the pressure relief valve, and the pressure switch were not working anymore. And basically what happened is the compressor would run, it would fill up, it would go past 4 bars, and it would just keep pumping and keep going, and it would not stop. So that was pretty bad, because obviously you want it to stop and not go over pressure. So I've turned on my compressor and it's full of air. So I've basically fixed this now, but I'll show you what went wrong. So the pressure relief valve is working fine. And if I release more air, the pressure will go down, and then the pressure switch will kick in and the compressor will start. Okay, so the pressure's dropped to 3 bar, which is turned on the compressor, and this will run up until when it gets to 4 bar. All right, so it's kicked off now at 4 bar, it stopped. So what I did wrong when I reassembled my compressor is basically, well, what I found out is I basically screwed these in all the way. I tightened them up all the way. As you can see here, I didn't have them all the way screwed in there. But if I crank down on this now, right? So if I tighten that up, the pressure relief doesn't work anymore. Like I can't, pulling out on this pressure relief, you can see here, like the pressure relief is coming out. The plunger, I'm pulling it out, but it's not kicking off. It's not releasing any air. So I have to loosen this off a little bit. Bit more, so it's still not getting any air out. Okay, so that was, well, once it stops pumping up again, I'll tell you how much that was. Okay, so the pressure relief valve is working at this point. So if I screw it in, it's half a rotation. So like 3/4 of a rotation out from fully in was enough. So I'll take it back. Here. All right, so that's 3/4 of a turn out, and it's working. So yeah, as you saw, if you, well, at least on my one, I'm not sure if it's everybody's compressor, if you screw it all the way in, air doesn't get into this pressure relief valve and it doesn't get into the pressure switch. So I had this pressure switch also, I had screwed it all the way in. There's no air getting to the switch. So the switch was always on and the compressor was always pumping, even when it got well over 4 bar. So what I recommend is before you take this apart, take some photos or mark it with a bit of paint or a texture or something, or maybe see how far it can screw in, just to determine if yours is screwed in all the way or if yours is slightly out a little bit. But yeah, that's the issue I ran into and had to fix. All right, so to start, I'm gonna make sure the compressor is unplugged, and I'm gonna turn the switch on for a moment to make sure there's no energy left in it. Turn it back off. So this red nut can unscrew. That can come off, the airbrush holder. The airbrush hose can unscrew and that can come off. If you hear Hughie walking around, that's because he doesn't like me ignoring them. Okay, so let's start with a pressure gauge. So I have here, I have an 11 mil spanner. So just going from below, I can just fit it in here and unscrew. So it's quite tight, so you'll need quite a narrow spanner. If you take the whole regulator off first, it will be a bit easier to do this actually. This is my first time doing this at all, so it's going to be a bit of a learning experience for both of us. All right, that's loose enough. So I believe these are 1/8 thread. 1/8 BSP. So now we'll take the regulator off, and it is not 11 mils. Okay, so it looks like the regulator is 14 millimeters. So as I said earlier, there will be some links down below where you can replace the pressure gauge and the pressure regulator. Oh, look at that. If you can see that, there's lots of rust in there. That's pretty yummy. So I think I'm just going to leave the regulator like that. If you have a problem with the regulator, they're pretty cheap replacements, and I'll have a link to them. So the tank itself. The first thing with the tank is down here is the drain plug, so you can unscrew that. That comes out. Now we're going to detach this pipe here. So this nut, this silver nut here, looks like that's 14 mils again as well. There we go. So here we have the red thing, that's the pressure relief valve. So you can pull this out and it'll release pressure. Or I think if it goes over pressure, it'll release pressure automatically. Here is, this black thing is the pressure switch. So it basically tells the compressor to turn off when it reaches a certain pressure level. You can find replacements for both of these online, which I'll have links to as well. These look like they're gonna be 14 mils as well, but they're gonna be much easier to unscrew. That one's out. So this is the, I'm not so sure about that because it's going to twist the cable if I unthread that. I might have to look inside first. Let's have a quick look inside. So just a Phillips head screwdriver. Definitely make sure this is unplugged and you've drained the energy out of it before we do this. Okay, so it's a bit hard to see, but the cable from this pressure regulator is this black cable here. That's coming up to the switch, and also is crimped
into this red wire here. Yeah, so they're crimped together. So if I unplug this one from the switch, I should be able to pretty freely spin that regulator now without too much worry. See, it's counterclockwise to undo it. Because this goes through a grommet, but it's not really a tight grommet or anything. Yeah. Doesn't look like it's enjoying being undone, but yeah, so if I feed some more slack through, should be able to get this whole thing to rotate a bit and give some relief on the cables. So it's a bit of a, you know, I think I'm being stupid. Let's do this another way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the compressor off and rotate it 90 degrees, and then I should have access to take off this switch. Okay, so a 10mm spanner for those bolts. As I said before, it's the first time I've done this, so bear with me. We're all learning this together. Okay, so they are a thread lock nut with a washer. And the washer is on top. Oh yeah, it actually says that on the warning here, is unplug and discharge before servicing. Okay, so compressor is unscrewed from the tank. So in theory, we should be able to rotate this block, maybe with an adjustable spanner, potentially. That should hopefully give us okay, so we can do this. Once we've taken the airbrush compressor off and undone the pipe, we can then just rotate the whole compressor, and that gives us a little bit of slack in the cable. So we're not twisting up this pressure switch cable much. And then we can eventually undo it. Now there's probably a better way to do this, but you've probably figured out by now that I don't really know what I'm doing. But we got there. So you get enough slack in the cable and you can eventually unscrew the pressure switch. Alrighty. Whew. So the tank. On the bottom is the drain valve and some feet. At the top you've got this block that I'm sure just unscrews. And it looks like there's some rubber seals in these holes here. So I can't imagine anything going wrong with this block, so I'm not going to take it off. So I'm a little bit scared I'll break it. Just put that aside for now. Okay, so now we have the compressor. I'm going to unscrew this nut to take this bar off. So Phillips head on this end of the compressor as well. Okay, so it's just a plastic end cap, and once you get that off, you can see the piston here, the bottom of the piston, and basically as the drive shaft spins, the piston goes up and down. Now let's get the compressor head off. This is Allen keys, and I think this is the 3mm Allen key. They can all just be taken out by hand now. Oh shit. I just dropped a washer. Okay, so let's have a look at what's under this compressor head. So we can take that off and you'll see this. Now, so first of all, a 12mm spanner can be used to take that off, I believe. Okay, so let's look at what is underneath this compressor head. So that's the top piece with its seal. So make sure that's all clean. Mine has a bit of metal in it. And then there's this piece. I don't know what it's called, but it separates where the piston is basically from where all the rest of the compressed air is. And this this like rubber part here is like a one-way valve, silicone valve, I think. So that should be clean. But you can see it just presses in. So if you have to get a new one, you can just pop it in like that. And then there's a seal here, and that seals onto the piston, like so. So just make sure all this here is clean. Mine's a bit wet for some reason. Okay, then we've got this sleeve piece that goes around the piston to create a seal. And I'm just going to make sure that's clean. Then you have the actual piston itself here. So it's got like a little sort of seal bushing, something, whatever it's called there. And it's got this little like metal tab that pops up and down. And then underneath that tab is a little hole. And then the way that works with the piston going up and down is that when the piston is going down, the air from down underneath can come up into the chamber, into the piston. And then when the piston is going up, the compression presses this tab down and doesn't let any of the air in the piston go out. So then the air in the piston gets compressed. As it gets compressed, it gets pushed up through this rubber one-way seal and then into the head of the compressor, then out through the tube into the tank and out to your airbrush. So basically this seal has to be good, this seal has to be good, this little metal tabby thing has to be good. If you have problems there, there's going to be problems with your compressor. So that's what it looks like. Now, I think this is as far as I'm going to go. I don't really want to take the motor apart. You can buy replacement motors and things, but I think I'm going to stop here. Okay, so yeah, I've seen online a lot of people having problems with their regulator, pressure regulator, and then problems in the cylinder head with dirty seals and things like that, causing it to fail. So let's now put it all back together. So let's get going. So we'll put this cylinder, this is basically the cylinder here. Put this back on carefully. Seat that down into its little section. Make sure that's over the hole. Now, this plate It's wet for some reason. I haven't been using the compressor, so I'm not really sure why it's wet. But you can see that it's got a seal here that's got to be clean. That just fits over like so. Then we've got the compressor head like this. It's pretty simple to put this back together. Just gonna start all these bolts by hand and sort of tighten them up in a cross fashion. So I'm not going to tighten one up super hard from the start. It's going to all get tightened up as evenly as possible. Oh, I forgot to say, on my compressor, there's like a plug here. This is just a plug. So it just needs an Allen key. Yeah, so, okay, so it needs a 5mm Allen key for this plug. But it just creates a seal, so there's no need to take it out or anything like that. I forgot the handle. Okay, so it turns out I've just been struggling with my shitty multi-tool when I actually have a different one that also fits. So that's always fun. Okay, so I've just gotten to the point where these are a little bit tight, so now I'm going to actually tighten them up in a cross fashion. So doing diagonals. Yeah, so to put the end cover back on is really simple. It just pops on. Then 4 of these screws, there's no seals or anything, so just screw those back in. They don't have to be particularly tight or anything. This is just a dust cover. Just nipping them up slightly, not too hard at all. I'm gonna grab the tank again. So I've got the tank. So just looking at these cables here on the compressor here, we've got a capacitor and then the switch, and it's all crimped together, unfortunately. And because they're crimped together, it means we can't really unplug the cables to make life easier for ourselves. So I don't really want to twist up all the cables, so I'm going to have to do what I did previously in reverse. So basically, I'm going to hand screw in the pressure regulator and also rotate around the whole compressor. Because even though I can rotate the cable here inside the grommet, that's just going to end up twisting up this cable here because it's crimped together. Just going to put strain on things. So I'm going to avoid all that and just do it the hard way, basically. Actually, before all that, I'm just going to put this tube back on. So I think the bit of rubber here, this black rubber, came out of the nut. So I'm going to try and press it back in without damaging it, hopefully. Actually, you know what? I think that'll be okay. I think that will be okay. I think the thread will cut through the rubber. Never mind. So first of all, I'm just going to put this tube back on. Yeah, so before I attach the pressure regulator valve, I'm going to attach this tube. Okay, so that's screwed down to that point. Okay, that's good. So that was a 14mm spanner. Now to thread this in, basically it's got to thread in clockwise, which means this compressor is going to rotate in clockwise. If you have an assistant, this would be a good time to call them over. Okay, so I've got the thread started. Okay, that's hand tight, which is good enough for now. Whew. Okay, so that was fun. Now, I'm going to feed this wire back in, sort of how it was mostly on the inside. This grommet here, you can't really see it because it's in shadow, but there's a rubber grommet just where my finger is. That's sort of been slightly pushed out of position. So I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver. Yeah, there we go. So it's okay again. Yeah, just work it a bit here. Okay, so the grommet's back into position. Now, I don't think I ripped any of these wires out. They all seem okay. So I'm going to take this blue wire, blue-gray wire, and plug it back onto the switch, like so. Make sure that's all right. Now there is this blue, green and yellow like earth wire that I'm going to make sure is, so see how there's a thread here for a screw? You want to put the earth wire there. Okay, so I've got the green and yellow wire on the screw. Just going to gently press everything back in, make sure everything's tucked away. Oh, okay, I put this on sideways. Never mind. Okay, so green and yellow wire on the screw. Everything's tucked away. Screw it in. We'll just do these four, nip them up. Okay, those four screws are all nipped up now. So let's start sealing this up. So we have our 14mm spanner. Yep, we have our 14mm spanner. Do you know what? We might screw the compressor onto the tank now. So the washer goes on top, the screw through there. Just going to start it by hand. Okay, not going incredibly tight with those. It's a 10mm spanner again. At the end here, I'm just going to hold the screwdriver and tighten up with the spanner. So yeah, hold with the screwdriver, tighten with the spanner. Just going to tight, but not crazy tight. I don't think there's any need to go crazy tight. The pressure regulator valve. It has a little rubber seal inside it. So nipping this up will seal it. Now, overpressure pressure relief valve, that goes back in. 14mm again as well. This wire here, when I turned it back up, it screwed up a little bit, so I'm actually going to try and take a bit of slack out of that. This back cover's coming off again. So actually, if you do have to do this, I would make sure it's pretty tight before you put the compressor back on, unlike what I did. There we go. Alright, so I've taken some of the twists out of it. Okay, so I've gotten a bit of relief back in the cable just by moving some of the twists around. That's a bit better. That makes me feel a bit better about it. Again, remember the green and yellow wire. Ground wire has to come up here into the screw, and that will ground the compressor case, essentially, so you don't get electrocuted, which is always nice. Okay, so pressure regulator is tight, pressure relief valve is tight, the top of the tube is tight. Just got to do the bottom of the tube now. Press that down. I just got to slowly work my way through this. Okay, that's pretty tight now. Next thing to do is to find the drain plug that I put somewhere. Here it is. So drain plug goes underneath. Put that in. Alright, so now I'm going to put the pressure regulator back on. And if I was being really careful, I'd probably get some thread sealant, like the Loctite thread sealant or thread tape, to seal this up. Because all the other fixtures, all these here, they have rubber seals in them, and this one doesn't. So depending on how this goes, I might come back and put some thread sealant on it, but for now, I'm going to just do it as is. So this was 14 mils. Yeah, just tighten it up to there. Now we've got our pressure gauge. Same again. Depending on how things go, I might come back and put some thread tape or thread sealer on this. But for now, I'm going to go as is. Okay, so this one was 11 millimeters. I think I can get it around. Alright, there we go. So it's all back together. Now we just need to test it, and hopefully it all works as it was before. Can't forget my little airbrush holder. Okay, so moment of truth. So it seems to be working.
If you're interested in this compressor, then I'll have links down below to it, as well as some links to the parts diagram and where you can find individual spare parts. And if you enjoyed the video, then please give it a thumbs up. Cheers.